First Watch Now.
What you need to know from the Cochise County Sheriff's Office.
Hosted by Cochise County Public Information Officers Carol Kappas and Grady Butler. First Watch on 92.3 KWCD.
And it's brought to you by Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative, giving you an inside look into your sheriff's office. I'm Grady Butler, and with me is Carol Kappas, Public Information Officer with the Sheriff's Office, and Sheriff Mark Daniels. Good morning.
Good morning, Cochise County.
Hello, everyone.
Well, let's start with Project Graduation last week. We had to pre-record this show last week because you were going to be staying up all night long. How'd it go?
It was great. It truly was. And first of all, let me give a shout-out to all the graduates, but also Rotary Club here in Sierra Vista and San Pedro Kiwanis and all the Kiwanians throughout Sierra Vista that put that together. It was once again, just a really nice event. If you look at the gifts, I worked the Buck store. I worked out till 3 in the morning. The sheriff's deputies that worked there, we had a little booth event set up for the goggles, the Fatal Vision goggles, so the kids put them on and try to walk. But it was just a very high energy, safe event. So again, thanks to everybody that puts that on and keeping the kids with all that energy in a place that we know they're going to be safe.
And then last Monday, of course, was Memorial Day, and you were at a couple events for that.
I did. I had the honor to attend the at Veterans Park here off Veterans Cemetery here off Buffalo Soldier Trail. A very nice event. Then went to Old Post on with the military, General Hale. Just a nice remembrance. And we should never forget, those who paid the ultimate price to keep our freedoms and liberties intact. So, again, a surreal day, I'll just say that, but it was a day that we all must never forget.
And you were really busy on the weekend, too, prior to that. So our former deputy, Ray Thatcher, had a memorial event that you went to. And tell us a little bit about that, because when you see things like that, and even though he passed some time ago, it's good to see that people can come together and still recognize that type of a situation.
Well, the Thatcher name's a very popular name here. Sue Thatcher, his former wife. Ray Thatcher worked patrol. He's a school teacher here for a while, too, up in Bowie. But I worked the road with Ray and back in the 80s, and just a down-to-earth, good guy. And I'll just say this, listen to his family talk. It was a memorial service up in Ramsey Canyon, where Sue lives, at the house. Saw a lot of the former law enforcement, both city folks, Rick Tudor, retired service PD, then constable for several terms, and just so many of the retirees. But that's surreal, too. I mean, and one of the things was very interesting, and this is going to take a spin here, but his children were talking, and for those who don't know, Ray Thatcher was part of Miracle Valley. A very dark time in the sheriff's office history back in the 80s, and under Sheriff Judd, where Ray Thatcher, during a melee, really was a melee, where Ray Thatcher shot and killed 2 of them. And this was an anti-government group that hated law enforcement, hated government, and it worked its way into a shootout in Miracle Valley. And there's a book on that now. But the family, his kids were talking about the fun Ray that was very social, very involved in everything, and then after the shooting, he took a big beating through the courts. He took a big beating through the media. He took a big beating through some social. I mean, we didn't have social media back then. But he changed, and he was never the same, and how the kids talked about that. So that's why, I mean, people don't realize the impact of our law enforcement job when we're involved in a vital or a critical situation like an officer-involved shooting. So it was surreal to hear that, because, I mean, his life changed. The second half of his life changed, and I saw that working with him and having some conversations with him. I didn't know him before the shooting, but I knew him after the shooting. So even though he still was a great guy, but he just became very private. His kid made a comment, his son, saying that he didn't like to go to social events anymore. I mean, he just became very isolated after that shooting. So again, when I say thank law enforcement. I mean, they got a heck of a job out there, a huge challenge, a lot of scrutiny out there on us, but embrace us. I mean,
and that all leads back to mental health. There's a lot of that type of a topic of conversation worldwide, but specifically we focus on nationwide, and we even drill down further to statewide and then our own local Cochise County. And we talked a little bit about a mental health grant that the Legacy Foundation provided to the Sheriff's Office, that Commander Watkins wrote that grant, and with Faye Hosey, he was able to, get all the information that he needed and get that taken care of. So that's still a major project that we're working on. But if we just touch on it again, because it's so important that we know those types of things.
Well, it truly is. And this grant, I'm really excited about this grant. We've been talking about mental health in rural America for a long, long time. We don't have the resources like you see in an urban area like Phoenix. But thanks to Commander Bob Watkins, we got this grant thanks to the Legacy Foundation that supported and trusted us to push us forward, working with Jackie Clay, our county school superintendent, Brian McIntyre, our county attorney. Again, this collective effort, and our health department, Alicia Thompson, our health director, all working together. And this is a mental health response team for community, both youth and adults. So having that ability, and then working with La Frontera, which is an organization for mental health. And if you go by Cochise College off Colombo, off Charleston there's a building that's being constructed by CBIS. That's La Frontera. That's an in-house treatment center that's going to work side by side with us too. So, excuse me. So we're really excited about where this is all going. It's a step in the right direction with what just happened in Uvalde, Texas. Again, we're on the front edge to try to find innovative ways to address rural needs.
And moving in that same direction, talking about the 233 now mass shootings in the United States since January, Uvalde being a horrible one. And we're also taking a little bit of, constructive criticism from our citizens in our communities, wanting to know what we do. What are we doing to be proactive? How are we addressing any type of active shooter situation? And we've had a few scares here in Cochise County. So if you can let the people know basically what our standpoint is and how we would proceed in a matter like this, not taking away from anyone else and not armchair quarterbacking anybody else. Just basically, how do we address these situations and what are we doing to move forward?
Well, if you go back to 2012, 2013, where school shootings were highlighted, that was a big time for school shootings. And let me just divert from that for just a minute. The first documented school shooting, and this was 1764. I was looking through all the historical on school shootings the other day. 1764, back east, I think it was in Massachusetts, where 9 children were killed and 2 teachers. I mean, all the way back to 1764. But now bring that up to 2012, 2013, where sheriffs throughout the country, to include myself, that's right after I got elected, were being challenged, what are we doing with school shootings? Myself, Sheriff Wilmot, Sheriff Paul Babu out of Pinell County at the time, we all came out with a collective statement about protecting schools. Since that time here now within Cochise County, we have worked very, very close with leadership at all our schools, both within the cities in the county, to make sure that they're protected, making sure that we're talking about what is a building security, how do we harden the target, what is the response. ALICE training, we kicked that off as a pilot program for the state of Arizona. I think we trained 15 to 17,000 students, community leaders, and educators on how to address an active shooter. And they actually changed that word. It's actually active killer now. How do kids respond now? And so we've been very good. We put a regional communication center, so no matter where you're at in the county, there's a regional center to address it for communication, which, trust me, that's very important for first responders and EMS. Second thing is every school in Cochise County has radio to address us as we approach the scene. So the leadership has that radio to tell us what's going on, where the act is happening, so we can identify, isolate that target, and neutralize it. And bottom line is what happened in Uvalde will be talked about for months. It's very, very sad. But the bottom line is we're so far ahead. Do we have all the answers? No, we don't. We all understand that. But I can promise you and assure you one thing is we're doing everything we can, thanks to Jackie Clay and all our school superintendents, to make sure that we're keeping our kiddos, our youth safe.
And one of the things that Jackie Clay is also working on closely with our office is identifying the schools, obviously, that currently have radios, but she's also working towards a project to see how we can expand that asset to other schools, all schools in Cochise County. So that's a huge, huge project and goal, and I'm hoping that she's able to be successful in that.
She is, and she's working with her office, trying to expand what we're already doing. I mean, I'm all about it. Let's find ways that we can do that. But you got to have the innovation, the energy, and the will. And Jackie Clay has that. Brian McIntyre has that on the prosecution side of it, and we have it on the law enforcement side of it. So, again, We all own a piece of school safety, and we all have to work together. That'll make it better.
You recently had a radio show with Senator Kelly. Tell us about that.
Saturday, I was on iHeartRadio out of Tucson. Senator Kelly was on the show with me. We talked about border. We talked about what was going on the border, the different approaches on the border, and I appreciate Senator Kelly jumping on there with us to discuss this. And we had a very good talk. I mean, we all agree that it's not working. Most important. So once we agree on that, let's agree the fact this ain't politics. It shouldn't be political. Border security is community safety and community security. It's humanitarian because we see the evils of it. We see the death of it when people are trying to come in. But we have to have a secure border. And I'm not talking about immigration, right? I'm talking about border security. I'm talking about the drugs coming across our border. So we hit on that for about an hour on the show. Again, iHeartRadio in Tucson. We both agree on that, but we need the entire Congress or the majority to step up, secure this border, identify it, and we need our administration to do the same.
And that's pretty evident in our Operation Safe Streets. That project and program, we are taking some hits and some criticisms on, so you may get 20 today, but you're letting 120 go. We just need to assure people that, not doing anything is not the answer.
We've talked about that, and I want to focus on the majority here. The majority of people I speak with, whether it's throughout the community, whether I read it on our Facebook page, wherever, it's been well received. And let me say this to those that make comments like that. I respect your frustration if you want a secure border. I really do. But don't beat us up on it. We're trying to do everything we can. We're not turning our back on it. Look around the country, look around other counties and see what they're doing or maybe not doing. But I promise you, in this county, we're trying to do everything we can to secure this border. For those that just want to be evil, well, I can't. What am I supposed to say to you? I mean, but those that are frustrated, I get it. I'm frustrated too. But I'm not going to turn my back and start throwing daggers. The bottom line is we got to be productive, we got to be effective, we got to be efficient with it, and we are doing all three.
And being an educational component of that too, without being political, people are coming to tour the border and they want to make sure that they can see firsthand. So it's people that can maybe make an impact and help out in some way. So we welcome that educational opportunity for people throughout the United States. We have sheriffs that are planning to make a visit. We have other people that are planning to make visits here in the next couple of weeks. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that it's just not one thing we're doing. It's a multi-pronged approach.
It is, and what you're hitting on, which has been, it's election cycle here. We got elections, in fact, mail outs go out here next month. So we have a lot of candidates. We have a lot of incumbents that want to come to the border. And a lot go to Yuma, Sheriff Wilmot, my partner over there in Yuma, and then they come here. We welcome that. It's time consuming, but having an educated candidate is so important. And that gives us an idea to understand that candidate, for that candidate to ask us and understand us. So it's a win-win. This is not about politics. I don't care what party you're running for. I don't care what the bottom line. I want you to understand that we have a need for border security, not just in Cochise County, but for this country. A secure border is a secure country.
And another educational component that we're putting out, especially on our Facebook pages, is Click It or Ticket, which is going on now through Sunday. It's been going on for about a couple of weeks.
I've seen that. And this is an annual event we've been doing for years. Thanks to the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, Director Alberto Gutierrez, a good friend of mine, who's a big proponent of keeping this state safe, both on the impaired driver, the training aspect of it for law enforcement and judges. People forget that. And the judges. There's a conference he does every year for them and us. But part of that is Click It or Ticket. Folks, if you go back 10, 15 years, the percentage of usage on seatbelts was down to 50, 60%. Right now, I think it's about high 80s, 90%, right in there, which is habitual, which means we have understood the habits and the need to wear seatbelts. And after my 38 years, the odds of the odds if you're not wearing a seatbelt and you're in a collision, you're thrown from that vehicle, are not good for survival. That's a fact of life. Are there stories that say, no, if I would have had a seatbelt on, something bad would have happened to me or I would have died? You bet. I mean, we don't live in a perfect world with all the perfect solutions, but I tell you, the odds of survival having a seatbelt on or a child in a child restraint or car seat, a certified, approved car seat, your survival rates go up considerably. That's what this message is all about.
And can you explain to everyone, because people are saying you can't pull me over for not wearing a seatbelt, so explain the difference between primary and secondary offenses.
And those people are right. They're very educated on that. And I always say we have a very educated community. So if we see you not wearing a seatbelt and we have no other reason to stop you, we can't stop you, bottom line. I mean, and we're not going to break the law to stop you just so we can address a seatbelt. Folks, wearing a seatbelt, though it's a law, and I know some people tell me I don't like wearing a seatbelt, you have to make those decisions, and the consequences will follow. And hopefully it's us stopping you to talk to you about it instead of us putting you on a stretcher or a gurney or taking you to the morgue because you didn't wear it. Again, I know that's drastic, but the bottom line is I've seen it in my 38 years where somebody's been thrown from a collision and they're laying there dead. And I always say, man, what would happen if they had that seatbelt on? So again, people got to make choices, and so does law enforcement. These laws were passed by the people. Our state legislative folks passed them, so we got to honor them. All the laws on the books I may not agree with, but I take a note to support the laws. So bottom line is please buckle up and be safe.
And one of the other things that you did this week is you swore in 5 new deputies, so they're going to also be enforcing the law. So congratulations to all of our new hires.
Sharp group. I had the opportunity last Thursday to go to the academy. I emceed our academy graduation, went to a CODA graduation, which is a detention officer graduation. A lot of week with graduations. A lot of time at graduations last week. And so congratulations to the 5. I'm looking forward to them. As Sergeant Hernandez, who runs our academy, said, very sharp group. Both the ones who graduate for service, the police department, Wilcox, Benson, all the different agencies have new officers out there, thanks to Sergeant Hernandez, Cochise College President Wattweiler over at Cochise. This is a great partnership here. So, again, homegrowns, staying here in the community, that's what it's all about.
And our awesome folks in detention are always trying to learn and find the latest innovations, and you've got something coming up next week called JailCon that you're going to be going to.
JailCon is put by NIJO, National Institute of Jail Operations. It's a national organization that puts on the conference. They do it every year in Phoenix, Arizona. As president of the Arizona Sheriff Association, I will be up there to give a welcoming speech on Monday morning. I'm going to go up Sunday afternoon. But again, it's great training for our detention officers, great training. So we're really looking forward to that. It'll have probably 400 or 500, if not more, detention officers, correctional officers throughout the country that come to Phoenix, Arizona. Hot time of year to come here. I call it our blizzard time, but because where most people are hiding in the house in the winters back in the Midwest, we hide in Phoenix in the summertime. But again, so it's a great conference to have.
And it has a lot of vendors. It has a lot of networking. It has a lot of collaboration. And now is the perfect time for that because we're looking at a new jail. So that's awesome that we have that type of networking going on.
Well, it is. And, you know, jails and detention facilities, correctional facilities are the hub of the criminal justice system. They're the forgotten hub. They really are. But it touches all the criminal justice system. It keeps those that cannot behave in society in a place. And most of them, think about it, this is a population within our correctional facilities and detention facilities where they don't want to be there. Majority don't want to be there. There's behavior issues. There's mental health issues. And guess what? They sit around all day looking how to address correctional detention officers, how to escape. I mean, all the things that, all the evil things. So the population isn't welcoming for our detention officers. And for them to build a culture of respect that we have very few problems. I'm not going to say that, but overall throughout the country we have very few problems. That goes back to the discipline, the rule, the law, and structure within those jails, but which is the people behind it.
We have a new scam that we need to tell everybody about from Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative.
So apparently SSVEC is notifying everybody that this one goes a little bit further. It not only takes telephone calls into consideration, wanting people to pay their bills, but they've even had reports of people knocking on your door, telling you that your bill is overdue or they're going to shut off your electricity. If you know you've paid your bill, you're good, but please don't let anybody in your house, and if anything like that happens, contact your local law enforcement agency. Even call 911, because you definitely don't want to invite anybody into your home that you don't know.
Well, exactly, and these scams are so prevalent anymore. You really got to be vigilant. I know we say this so much on this radio show. I mean, law enforcement, Attorney General's office, County Attorney's office, everybody's putting things out. Be careful. Don't become victim to a scam. But these scams continue. I just got one yesterday that I think I went to my community mailbox, pulled out the mail, and in there's an envelope from the post office. So I'm like, why is the post office sending me this big old letter, big old package. So I open it up. Inside there's a letter from the postmaster saying that I'm not immune from paying my postage. I can't mail things without a postage, and it's under that sovereignty. And you all heard about that, where they believe that the government doesn't exist. They don't have to pay postage. They don't have to obey the rules. So I get this letter to me, and I'm thinking, what is this? Underneath the letter was a package that was mailed from me, my home address, to my office address. So me to me. Now you think somebody would have caught that, to include the post office. I'm just going to say that. But it was a certified mail from a guy out in Nebraska. And in there, it's a document from the People's Bureau of Investigations, PBI. You can look them up online, saying that they've charged me and convicted me of these crimes of environmental warfare, you name it, just totally off the wall stuff. And then they handwrote my name in there, my birthday, my address at work. I mean, you name it. But I share that with you. When you get things like that, I spent a little time on that last night looking at, what is this? I've never even heard of this. But it's a group. They're online, but it's only there to disrupt your lifestyle and cause hate, negative, or however you want to look at it. Folks, call us when you see this kind of stuff. I called myself, but call us. And in fact, I'm going to give this to Brian McIntyre today as our legal, and let him look at this too. He loves when I call him on this stuff. But the bottom line is, call the sheriff's office, call your police departments. Let us look at this stuff. Don't lose sleep on this. Let us be the middleman in this, because it's just ridiculous. We have people out there that are throwing out this disruptive information. It truly is, just to get in somebody's lives. And I went back and did some research, and there was a person here in Sierra Vista that sent this group that claims to be an agent of this group. That should say it all, folks. That said that the police department and sheriff's office had been harassing somebody. So guess where this came from? So again, let us be involved in that. I know it's maybe a little confusing, but if you look at People's Bureau of Investigation, if you get anything from them, PBI, because it'll be a thing that you've been convicted in their tribunal court. Don't fall for that, folks. And they want me to respond. There's nothing logically I can respond to that's not going to come out really bad. So I will ignore that. But I still have to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
And in the midst of all of that drama, you're going to be busy this weekend too. So you have to put that particular investigation aside. So you're going to be going to the Cattle Growers Association tomorrow in Wilcox.
Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, the Cattle Growers annual meetings up in Wilcox at the Elks at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it's all the ranchers, farmers, agriculture folks, their vendors that work with them throughout the year. They have their annual meeting here. And it includes Graham, Greenlee, Cochise, and people from all over the state come here. It's a really nice event. Sheriff P.J. Allred from Graham County and I both attend that and say a few things, and so it is. And they have a luncheon up there. So I always like to make sure I support our agriculture folks. I'll be there. And then tomorrow night, the Sierra Vista Boys and Girls Club's having their 25th birthday celebration. So I'm going to MC that tomorrow night, and I'll be part of that. So again, thanks Jay and the crew over there, and thanks to the community that supports our Sierra Vista Boys and Girls Club, and for those in Bisbee, for the Bisbee Boys and Girls Club, which is separate, but they do a very, very good job too down in Bisbee with those kids.
And you're combining your Stop of the Week and Safety Message of the Week on temp tags.
Temporary tags. You see them everywhere. The white tags in the back of a window. And by the way, they got to be visible. And they're hard enough to read as it is. So if you put them behind a rear window and there's glass, there's a chance you can get stopped, because you have to be able to read that. And usually what they're doing is stopping to make sure they're valid. That's what we're doing, just like a license plate. I stopped one yesterday and ran the plate. It came back expired in last month. So I stopped them. ADOT put out a thing. It's on our website. Look on our Facebook if you got more details, want more details on this. But they're backlogged on license plates in the state. So, but you have to have a valid temporary tag, whether the dealership gave it to you, whether the MVD or Gingers gave it to you. You got to have a temporary tag that's valid. You can't just drive around when it expires and say, it's not my problem. It is. It technically says you have no registration. And so I stopped one yesterday, expired last month, and he's like, well, I can't get it anymore. Well, then you can't drive your car. And I know that sounds bad. The price of fuel, there might be a thought behind that. But bottom line is this. I mean, you got to have valid registration. It's got to be visible. So please Make sure it's in a visible spot, and if it's been there for a while and the weather's got to it, get another one because you can be stopped. And what we're looking for is to make sure you have valid registration. And I'll combine that with one last thought. We're getting a lot of temporary vehicles with temporary tags coming from outside the county, especially Maricopa, that they're putting these. They buy these vehicles, they call them disposable vehicles, throw temp tags on them, come down here and to smuggle. So we're very keen to it right now. So we're watching temporary tags very closely. So but make sure they're valid. That's all we ask for.
Well, Sheriff Mark Daniels, we thank you for coming and talking to us today.
Carol, Grady, thank you. Everybody have a great week. I'll talk to you next Friday.
And Carol, who do we have coming in next?
We have Cochise County Attorney Brian McIntyre.
It's First Watch on KWCD Country, and it's brought to you by Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative.
It's First Watch Now.
Hosted by Public Information Officer Carol Kappas and Grady Butler.
On 92.3 KWCD.
And it's brought to you by Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative, giving you an inside look into your sheriff's office. I'm Grady Butler, and with me is Carol Kappas, Public Information Officer with the Sheriff's Office, and our next guest.
Welcome back, Cochise County, and thank you so much, Cochise County Attorney Brian McIntyre, for being here today.
Good morning. It's great to see you both. A little early, but that's all right. We're not strangers to early mornings, so glad to be here again.
Well, thanks. So tell us a little bit. Let's just kick off for what is the county attorney's office working off now? Are you guys super busy with Operation Safe Streets? Is that making your office be impacted more?
So to give you an idea, in I think 2019, which is our last, let's say, normal year in the criminal justice system and in the county attorney's office, so it's pre-COVID, in 2019 we filed a total of 20 felony flight cases, which is, some people call it failure to yield. It's basically getting into a police chase, right? Lights and sirens are behind you, they're trying to pull you over, and you make the rather unfortunate decision not to just pull over and face whatever consequence you have coming for whatever's going on. So 20 for a whole year. Between January of 2021 and March of 2022, we filed 139 of those cases. And right now, I think basically we're averaging 5 a week of cases that are submitted for charging on, at the very least, a felony flight charge. Unfortunately, and I'm sure the sheriff has talked about this, but 2 real consistent patterns. Either it's a juvenile driver or multiple juveniles who've headed down here to pick up a load of undocumented individuals. And, of course, they're new drivers. They're not necessarily the best drivers to begin with, and when they flee, unfortunately, bad things tend to happen. So it's either that profile, or it's adults out of typically the Phoenix or Tucson area. These individuals, what we're seeing almost exclusively is they have prior convictions. In some cases, violent prior convictions. They're almost all carrying fentanyl or methamphetamine, and typically they're doing this, engaging in this behavior because there's a lot of money, and they think it's a good way to score a lot of money to get a lot more drugs.
So give us a timeline of once someone is charged about the process that they have to go through, because a lot of people think they just get smacked on the hand, nothing happens. So kind of give us a rundown of what this individual would go through to the end process.
So typically these cases are submitted to us on what's called a 48-hour request. So that means law enforcement has done the arrest, they've booked them into jail, and they're asking that we proceed immediately on the case. So in that case, then within 48 hours of them seeing a judge, we have to have a felony complaint filed. After filing the felony complaint, on most of the, let's call it the basic ones, there's been no injury. There is endangerment of people on the roadway and of the passengers, but no accident. We send them through our early resolution court process. So they'll remain in custody, they'll see a judge, they'll get appointed an attorney, and they'll come in for early resolution court the next week to find out what their plea offer is. Then they're typically given 30 days to make a decision on whether to accept that offer or not. If they do, then 30 days later, they are sentenced and they have a felony conviction. Now, some of them were requiring jail time. It really depends on what the nature of the driving was, what the behaviors were. Obviously, if, as in one case, we had a lady down here, she came down, and it's my belief, it's not in the reports, and she didn't admit this, but I can see a trend. She was paid up front in fentanyl pills, and she made the really unwise decision to store those in her clothing. So not only did she have the felony flight issue, but then the initial, she had some loose pills like in her pocket, so that's another felony charge. She gets booked in, doesn't tell anybody about it. She's a female, so there's not a strip search conducted at the initial booking stage, but when she gets to Bisbee to change out, then she has, I think, 73 fentanyl pills hidden in her bra. Now she's got a Class 2 felony for importing a narcotic drug into the jail facility. And so this is someone who's just winds up stepping up and stepping up and stepping up in terms of her potential consequences. It's very unfortunate.
And we've seen an increase in weapons. We've seen a definite increase in weapons when we're stopping these people and seeing that they're carrying guns, so that adds to it as well.
Well, absolutely, in terms of especially, my concern, the risk to law enforcement and the risk to members of our community, given the behaviors that we're seeing, which is these individuals appear to want to avoid police contact at all costs. Right, and actually in one of the cases we took to indictment yesterday, he has 6 bodies in the car. All of them report when they're being interviewed by Border Patrol, we were yelling at him, please stop, please stop, please stop, and he's doing 130 on the highway. If you hit a coyote at that speed even, never mind spike strips or another vehicle, someone is getting killed.
And that leads us to the charge of kidnapping.
Yes.
So they've also been charged with kidnapping through your office.
Yes, and that's obviously it depends on the circumstances. But in particular, we're seeing a lot of folks in trunks. And when you're in the trunk of a vehicle, you're not in voluntary control of whether you're remaining in that vehicle. And so someone who engages in a felony flight with significant bad driving, we're typically charging kidnapping. That's also a Class 2 felony, to give everybody an idea out there. Class 1 is the most serious, and it's only homicide. So Class 2 is just one step down from there, and it's rather significant behavior, significant legal consequences to someone who gets charged with that.
And a couple weeks ago, there was also a situation where Safe Streets was conducting an operation. The vehicle fled through the Hereford-Palominas area and actually went cross-country. By the time it landed in a field, people had escaped, but our officers were on scene pretty quickly. But by that time, the vehicle was on fire. It caught the grass around it on fire. Mm-hmm. And our people were placed in imminent danger, as they know the propensity of having people in trunks, and they had no way of knowing that there wasn't someone still stuck in this car, because everybody seemed to have vacated pretty quickly. So our people were trying to use their knives and stab through the back seat to see if they could get to the trunk, and they weren't not successful because of the fire being so hot. And again, that's what the danger it puts our personnel in. Fortunately, there was no one in the trunk, because had they been, that would have been murder. And then the driver was subsequently located a short distance away.
Yeah, it's just real scary, and I think what gets lost in the politics of these discussions is the Safe Streets folks. All of these folks in law enforcement are human life focused. And that's their first focus. And you really saw it on that stop. I was listening to that call and honestly just pulled over and praying that it had a good result for everybody. But, we're going from a normal traffic stop to suddenly a felony flight, to then suddenly a substantial risk to human life, and not to mention a substantial risk of yet another monument fire or something of that sort. And it just really gives you clear and unfortunate idea of the lengths people are going because of essentially how much money there is in this behavior.
And there's a new law that is headed our way in Arizona, and we want you to kind of unpack that law for us and tell us how it's going to work.
So I will make it as simple and as, lacking legalese as possible. So in the past, there was a law, and it's actually still on our books. I've asked that it be removed, but can't get anybody to do it. In the past, there was an attempt to criminalize the transporting of undocumented individuals, essentially. Now, the problem with that law is the two prior administrations ago, the state of Arizona was sued, and that law was enjoined, meaning it can't be enforced, because it directly referred to immigration, a person's immigration status. And the courts came down and said, look, immigration is a federal-only issue. They have exclusive control, and so Arizona, you're not permitted to enforce that law. Now, as our problems have gotten worse, thankfully the state legislature kind of looked out to other areas, and specifically Texas had a statute that did not refer to immigration and criminalized this behavior based on other issues in the behavior. So our new statute, which won't go into effect until roughly 90 days after the legislature closes its session, but it has already been signed by the governor. What it criminalizes is transporting a person, any person, regardless of their status. It doesn't refer to immigration at all. Transporting a person with the intent to help them evade law enforcement or conceal them from law enforcement. So we're criminalizing that aspect of the behavior rather than that individual's immigration status, rather than making it dependent on that. For that reason, I feel fairly confident that it is constitutional, that it doesn't have the same issue with encroaching on the federal government's powers over immigration. I do absolutely anticipate that there will be lawsuits filed before the effective date, and someone will attempt to stop the enforcement of it, and so of course we'll have to see where that goes. But in terms of a tool for us down here, it will be very helpful because it will provide law enforcement a reasonable suspicion for a traffic stop rather than having to observe a traffic violation, or rather than have to wait for a request, let's say from Border Patrol, saying, hey, we watched this vehicle load up, will you please assist us in this stop?
And so what that does, and you were talking about the classes of felonies,
Mm-hmm.
and people really need to understand this. This is not just put in place for smuggling undocumented immigrants. It's just any type of, smuggling if you're trying to conceal people. But the class of felony, this is what people need to understand. It's going to make our detention centers significantly busier, because now instead of turning everybody over to Border Patrol, we're going to have the ability to book them under this new law, hopefully, and your office is going to be much busier. So what type of a crime will this be?
So I believe it's on the books as a Class 4 felony. Also somewhat unusual about it, and there's very few other statutes that work this way. It is something for which probation is not available. You are required to serve a prison sentence if convicted on the main charge. So, yeah, we have as a frequent scroller of the Sheriff's Department's Facebook page, there's often you see, which I'm always frankly happy for, the person does pull over, and then all the bodies and the driver are turned over to U.S. Border Patrol. Now, whether the driver in that case gets charged or not is not my concern as of right now. As of the effective date of this statute, that driver and probably the passenger, as an accomplice, will be getting charged every time. So the bodies will go to Border Patrol, and the driver, passenger, the people actually engaging in this particular activity, will be turned over to the Sheriff's Department and then us for prosecution.
And we're looking at something around September timeframe?
Yes.
Good.
Just in time for my birthday.
Well, we appreciate you coming and talking to us today and catching us up on the new laws and what's happening with Operation Safe Streets.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
That's Brian McIntyre, our county attorney. It's First Watch on KWCD Country, and it's brought to you by Sulphur Springs Valley Electric Cooperative.
You've been listening to First Watch with the Cochise County Sheriff's Office.
Hosted by Cochise County Public Information Officers Carol Kappas and Grady Butler.
Join us again next Friday morning, 7 to 8 a.m.
First Watch.
What you need to know from the Cochise County Sheriff's Office.
Only on 92.3 KWCD.
Careful.